Serendipity is the only explanation for how four guys with unfaithful partners ended up in the same high-end bar in a suburb of Washington, D.C., in the same afternoon at the same time. Maybe some higher power was taking pity on them because they had led mainly innocent lives and didn't deserve the terrible circumstances that they were stuck in. 30-year-old Jack entered the Gold Coast at about 2 p.m. on a fateful Wednesday. Unable to focus on his job as a medical researcher for an NIA, despite his normally abstaining nature, he had to do something, and perhaps this bar could provide some comfort. He planned on confronting Audrey, his wife of 7 years and mother to their 3-year-old daughter, that night about her disloyalty. He dreaded the outcome because he could not envision a best-case scenario. Jack was sipping a drink called Devil's Cut Jim Beam Bourbon at the most secluded table from the bar when he saw Tom enter about 2 to 20. Of course, at that time, he didn't know that was his name, but the sad look on Tom's face immediately caused Jack to think that guy looks as down as I feel. Just before he took another sip. 35-year-old Tom, a low-level lawyer for the federal government mostly dealing with military procurement contracts, had moved out of his suburban home into a cheap hotel a few days ago after finding out firsthand about his wife Amy's activities. He couldn't handle the way that he was being treated, but couldn't afford to do much else if he wanted to see his darling 6- and 8-year-old daughters on a regular basis. Tom noticed that Jack was the only other person in the bar, not surprising considering the prices at the Gold Coast and the time of day. He sat at the second most secluded table from the bar and was soon approached by Amber, the only cocktail waitress working at the time. "What can I get for you, sugar?" Amber asked. Seeing Tom's tired eyes and sad look, she said, "Looks like you need something strong." "That obvious, huh?" Tom rhetorically replied. Amber compassionately nodded her head. "2 shots of aged tequila, please," Tom sighed. Stan was clearly distressed when he walked in about 2:45. By then, Jack was on his 3rd Jim Beam, 2 more than he had had in the past 6 years, and Tom was on his 2nd round of tequila shots. 28-year-old Stan nervously paced the establishment for a while before settling down at a table close to the bar, one that had a good view of the entrance. Stan had to be at least 6 feet 6 inches tall and 240 pounds, a big, strong guy who looked like he either worked out with weights every day or had a job requiring intense manual labor. While not in blue-collar work clothes, he wasn't in a suit with discarded or loose tie like Jack and Tom, and his bulging biceps were clearly protruding from his short-sleeved shirt. "A pitcher of beer," he barked when Amber approached before she could offer a greeting. "Sorry, honey, but the owner of this place is kind of snobbish. We don't have that brand, but we do have another type on tap. A pitcher of it will do the same thing as a pitcher of beer, just cost you more," she smiled. "A pitcher of that alternative beer it is." Then Stan growled, wrapping the fingers of his left hand on the table while tapping the ground with the boot on his right foot. It was about 3 p.m. when Will, a short, plump, well-dressed man in his early 50s, entered. He exposed the $200,000 Zenith Christopher Columbus watch on his wrist by moving back the sleeve of his monogrammed silk shirt as he checked the time before sauntering up to the bar. He seemed to be as down as Jack, Tom, and Stan were. Rather than waiting for the bartender to notice him, he lightly grabbed the passing Amber by the arm and said, "Your rarest Scotch whiskey, please," loud enough to be heard by the only other 3 customers, none of whom had the slightest idea what he was ordering. "Obviously a man who knows his whiskey," she giggled. "That may cost you a pretty penny," Amber replied with a smile, and then laughed and said, "And don't forget the tip." "I wish my worry was money," Will sadly replied. While serendipity had brought the 4 betrayed partners to the same location, nothing might have come of it had there not been a catalyst. That essential ingredient took the human form in the person of Amber. Amber was more sophisticated and older than your average cocktail waitress, but was as pleasant to look at as those 10 years her junior, and she was all the more attractive because of her indomitable outgoing personality. After chatting with each of the 4 when she brought each round of drinks, as well as numerous times between rounds since the bar was so empty this sunny Wednesday afternoon, she realized that each of her 4 customers had a common problem: relationship troubles. None of them came right out and said that their partners were cheating, but having been around the block more than once, including having divorced a cheating spouse, Amber suspected that that was the root cause. Why else would these 4 be in her bar on this fine day in time with the sad looks that they exhibited? When it was Tom's turn to get yet one more tequila shot, Amber approached him with the drink but didn't put it on his table. "Say, Tom, have you ever heard the expression that misery loves company?" I guess he mumbled in response. "Well, I've never seen 2 guys as miserable as you and Jack over there," she said, pointing over toward Jack's table, "except for maybe Stan and Will," she continued, nodding her head in the direction of the bar. I'm putting this drink on Jack's table. If you want it, you need to go talk to him. Tom was about to protest. The last thing that he wanted was male companionship, but Amber was already halfway to Jack's table before anything came out of his mouth. When she placed Tom's tequila shot in front of Jack, he was surprised, but by that time, having known her for a good 90 minutes, he liked Amber and just shrugged his shoulders when she gave him the explanation for her actions. Tom reluctantly walked over to Jack's table. They introduced each other and started up an awkward conversation. At first, it was just a little uncomfortable small talk, but Jack, being further along in his drinking and less used to it than Tom, broke the ice. Tom, when I first saw you walk in, I said to myself, Jack, that guy looks as down as you feel. Do you think that we have the same problem? 10 minutes later, it didn't take much doing for Amber to convince Will to join the now freely conversing duo. Tom and Jack warmly greeted Will. They asked him what the heck Scotch whiskey was, took a good look at his watch, and soon were talking to him as freely as they were to each other. It was a little harder for Amber to get Stan to join the eclectic trio. His attire and drink didn't match with theirs. She offered him a pitcher on the house if he'd go over and at least say hi to them. Apparently that appealed to him because he was already sitting between Will and Tom when Amber brought him his complimentary pitcher of beer and a new frosted mug. By the time it reached 4:45 p.m. and other customers started coming into the bar, all four of the new acquaintances were buzzed, if not tipsy. They had each opened up about the nature of their problems, a cheating partner to the others, and now were at that point that occurs during many male conversations, one-upping each other. They had a friendly argument about whose situation was the worst and who had the most cunning solution to his, or the other's, problems. By then, for their own reasons, Will and Jack had to leave, and it was better for Stan if he did too. However, before they broke up, Will floated an idea. I think that we should each present our problem to a panel of objective strangers. Whoever is, deemed to have the worst situation, the other three will help fix it. Maybe not the best way to phrase it, but pretty good considering they were drunk. What do you mean by fix? Jack, a little more sober than Will and Tom, skeptically asked. I mean solve their problem. Look, the four of us have different talents. Stan has strength, Jack has courage and medical knowledge, Tom has legal ability and a typical cunning lawyer's mind, and I have money. I'm willing to fund the entire experience so that we each get a fair chance. And even if I don't win, I'm willing to support whatever we come up with to fix the winner's situation. Sensing skepticism, Will persisted. What have we got to lose, guys? Can things get any more depressing for us than they are now? At least we'll have the satisfaction of knowing that we're doing something. He's right, Stan barked, slamming his big right hand on the table and almost breaking it. I'm in, Tom said, snapping to attention for the first time in days. What the heck do we have to lose? Jack chimed in. What's the plan, Will? Tom, give me your card. I'll be calling you by tomorrow to have you write a little contract for the four of us. Jack and Stan, I need your cell phone numbers too. I'll arrange a meeting. How about 9 Saturday morning at one of my offices to make a formal agreement and discuss details. By then, I'll have started working on getting a panel to evaluate our stories, Will excitedly exclaimed. What do we do until then? Jack asked. Keep things as they are as much as possible. You know your partners better than I do. I'm not saying you have to act happy, but don't do anything extreme. Either pretend that you're all award-winning actors, Will replied. They all shook hands and got up to leave, each reaching for their wallets. To show good faith, and because I'm so excited about this. Let me pay for your drinks, Will said as he motioned Amber over. And tip our amazing catalyst, he continued once she was within earshot. Will settled the bill and gave Amber a $400 tip, $100 each. She also received a genuine hug from each member of the group. It's great to see you guys walk out of here ready to take action, or should I say stumble, what? She joked. Tom walked back to his nearby hotel room while Jack and Stan took taxis home, and Will was picked up by his limo. No one wanted a DUI to ruin their plans. The four co-conspirators met at one of Will's suburban offices, a new brick 3-story building with the name Bronson Commercial Realty displayed over the elegant cut glass entrance. Who's Bronson? Stan naively asked. Yours truly, William H. Bronson Jr., Will replied with a smile. I'm kind of conceited, but this is the only one of the dozen businesses that I own that I named after myself, he grinned. After venting about how tough the past few days had been, Will, Stan, and Jack were still catching up with their wives, while Tom was alone in his rundown hotel room, only managing to see his girls briefly. They wasted no time getting down to business. Tom had prepared a contract based on Will's instructions and had it saved on a USB drive, making it easy for them to make any necessary changes using one of Will's computers. In the contract, the four friends agreed to present their individual situations to an impartial panel. The panel would then choose which situation was the worst, and the friends would dedicate all their efforts to rectifying it. They would brainstorm ideas together and commit to implementing their final decision, as long as it wasn't illegal. Each friend agreed to take up to 4 consecutive days off work if needed, and to diligently follow through with any tasks assigned to them. We need to avoid electronic contact from now on, except through these disposable phones. Will announced, handing out the phones after everyone had read and signed the contract. I've already programmed all our burner phone numbers into each device, and they should only be used to call one another. Each phone has $200 worth of prepaid minutes, which should be more than enough. What about the panel that will review our presentations? Tom asked. I've arranged for the head of a polling firm to discuss that with us, Will replied. Just as he finished speaking, the doorbell rang. That must be him now, Will said, springing out of his seat and hurrying to answer the door. Guys, meet Dr. Andrew Minton, a highly respected polling expert, Will introduced, gesturing for the others to come to the conference room. Dr. Minton was a tall, distinguished-looking man with a gray beard and wire-rimmed glasses. Just call me Andy, Doctor, Minton suggested. After the introductions, Andy took a seat at the head of the table. So, how can my polling organization assist you gentlemen? He asked. Tom gave a brief explanation of what they were looking for in their individual situations. As Andy stroked his beard, deep in thought, Jack asked, "What kind of panel do you think would be best, Andy?" "I recommend a panel of about 20 adult males, between the ages of 25 and 50, without any women. After listening to your presentations, the panel will discuss them and vote. If no one gets a majority on the first ballot, they'll eliminate the presentation that received the fewest votes and vote again. The final vote should reach a majority decision. I suggest having mostly married men on the panel, with a few single and divorced individuals," Andy explained. "We would also like to know why they voted the way they did, and the actual results of the vote," Stan added. The others nodded in agreement. "How soon can you make this happen?" Andy Will inquired. "Is Wednesday at 10 p.m. at my office a convenient time for everyone? You will each have 25 minutes to present and answer questions. After the presentations, the panel will meet, discuss, vote, and provide a write-up with the results. You should have the answer by 3 o'clock, or at the latest 4, Andy confirmed. Everyone agreed to the plan. Jack, Tom, and Stan left the room, leaving Will to discuss financial details with Andy. On Wednesday, Andy informed them that the panel consisted of 21 straight men, 15 of whom were married, 4 divorced, and 2 single. The youngest panelist was 24, while the oldest was 47. Andy had the 4 friends draw cards to determine the order in which they would present. Each presenter would have 15 minutes to share their story with the panel in a private room, while the other 3 watched from a viewing room behind a one-way mirror. After the presentation, the presenter would answer questions for 10 to 15 minutes. The order ended up being the same as the order in which they arrived at the Gold Coast: Jack, Tom, Stan, and finally Will. Just a reminder, no names should be mentioned. Not yours, your wife's, or even your kids if you have any. You will simply be known as presenter 1, 2, and so on. Even though the panelists have all signed confidentiality agreements, it's best to limit any identifying information, Andy emphasized. They all nodded in agreement. "The last place I want to be is here. Pouring out my heart," Jack began his monologue, "but I feel lost and I need to do something about it. Thank you for listening. I am presenter 1. Jack proceeded to share how he discovered that his wife, Audrey, had been seeking attention from other guys. He couldn't pinpoint the exact time frame, but it seemed like she had been doing this since shortly after giving birth to their daughter 3 years ago. It appeared that she frequently went to local college campuses or male-dominated conferences to meet and engage with other men. Jack believed that she made sure her partners used protection, although he wasn't entirely sure. He had recently obtained evidence of her infidelity, but hadn't confronted her yet, dreading the conversation. "Have you noticed any changes in the frequency of your encounters with her?" Panelist 4 asked. "No, none at all. That's probably why I never suspected anything and would still be clueless if I hadn't stumbled upon her activities by accident," Jack replied. "You mentioned that you think this started after the birth of your child. Did your wife go through any noticeable transformation during that time?" Panelist 19 inquired. "Well, I guess you could say she did." Jack trailed off. wiping his tears and apologizing to the panelists for showing vulnerability. How was she so successful in attracting younger men? Panelist 6 asked innocently. She's stunningly beautiful, standing at 5'9", weighing 135 pounds, long blonde hair, and legs that would make any man weak, Jack replied dreamily. Sorry I asked, 6 chimed in with genuine regret. How often do you suspect she engaged in these encounters? Panelist 14 inquired. Probably once every 2 weeks, Jack whispered softly, repeating himself more audibly when several panelists indicated that they hadn't heard. What's your current situation? Panelist 1 asked. She must sense that something is wrong. I've been telling her that I don't feel well, but she knows something else is bothering me. I had planned to confront her on the night that I met presenters 2 to 4, but we decided to wait and support each other instead, Jack responded, wiping his eyes once more. She looks scared and acts cautiously around me while pretending to be happy. Thank you, presenter 1, Andy said, checking his watch. That concludes your 27 minutes. Please send in presenter 2. Jack left the panel chamber and returned to the observation room, where Tom was already standing and ready to take his turn. They hugged before Tom entered the jury room. Hello, I'm presenter 2, Tom began nervously. Despite being an attorney, he rarely spoke in front of an audience, especially in such emotional circumstances. But his pain, anger, and resentment gave him the strength to persevere. Tom recalled how he had returned home early from a business trip, only to find a man leaving their house around lunchtime. He overheard his wife, Amy, saying, "Did you forget something, Jeremy?" "My name isn't Jeremy," Tom told the panelists, attempting to muster a smile despite the heartbreaking situation. He went on to explain what he had witnessed. His wife seemed only slightly flustered in response to his outburst of what the heck is going on here. She calmly said, "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, Tom." Amy proceeded to explain that she had been having an affair with a man named Jeremy for over a year, and she intended to continue it. She claimed to still have affection for Tom, but insisted that he had to accept the situation. If he didn't, she threatened to withhold love from him in the future. When he mentioned the possibility of a divorce, she venomously warned him that she would make sure he ended up miserable and that she would get full custody of their daughters, the most important things in his life. Her final words before he stormed out of the house were, "Once you accept this situation, I'll take you away for a weekend and we'll have an incredible time." Does anyone else know about her secret relationship? Panelist 2 asked, almost afraid to delve into this mess any further. I don't think so. I found out that this Jeremy guy is married too, and a co-worker of hers, so she has a real incentive to keep things quiet. Since I found out, I've subtly asked her friends and family members if they know, and I haven't gotten any signals that they do, Tom solemnly replied. What's your current situation? Andy asked. I left the house that day, called my daughters that night, and haven't been back in the 10 days since except to grab some clothes and other things when my wife was at work. I've also seen my daughters for a few hours each on Saturday and Sunday. I took them to a park and the zoo to get away from the house, Tom responded. Have you had any discussions with your wife since you left? Panelist 21 asked. She's called me twice. The first time she was pleasant, but firm. The second time, which was just yesterday, she told me to get my act together and come back home because our daughters and her parents were asking too many questions. She threatened to file for divorce based on abandonment if I didn't comply, Tom answered, trying his best not to make eye contact with any of the panelists. Would divorce be so bad? Panelist 8, one of the single guys, innocently inquired. She's the mother of my children, and she would try to get sole custody and turn the kids against me. It would ruin my life, Tom responded, wiping away tears. Thanks, presenter number 2, Andy said softly with compassion in his voice. Please send in no. 3. Tom left with his head down, almost running into Stan, who was just a few feet from the conference room door. Sorry, Stan said, putting his strong hands on Tom's shoulders. I couldn't listen to you any longer. So I've been waiting outside for the past 10 or 15 minutes. Tom nodded his head and returned to the viewing room, while Stan walked into the panelists' room. Stan made quite an impression on the panelists with his dramatic entrance and NFL lineman size. Seeing the shocked looks on their faces, Stan began with an apology. Sorry about the abrupt entrance, he said. I'm really charged up about my situation, and I've been struggling to control my temper for several days, and I'm starting to lose it. If your story is anything like the other two, Andy quipped, we understand. Please continue, presenter number 3. While not as eloquent as Tom and Jack had been, but equally sincere, Stan shared his situation. He had recently discovered that his wife Joyce had been having a secret relationship for a long time with a single guy that he was friendly with, if not good friends with. They hadn't really tried to hide their relationship, and what hurt Stan almost as much as the affair was that many people they both knew, including her family, knew about it but never told Stan. Since Stan was an expert at guy, his wife and lover never met at his house because they knew it was under surveillance. One of the bigger blows to Stan's self-esteem was the fact that his wife had tricked him into giving her money several times, which she then used to rent motel rooms with her lover. Have you confronted her yet? Panelist 1 inquired. No, and I'll tell you why. I've had problems with anger management in the past. I've received counseling for it, and for the last few years, I've been successful in controlling it. However, I'm angrier now than I have ever been in my life. I'm scared that when I confront my wife, I'll lose control and harm both her lover and possibly her. I am a powerful man, and even a minor attack could result in death. And then I'll spend the rest of my life in jail, Stan admitted, ending with a deep sigh. Do you have children? Panelist 1 continued. Thankfully, no. Has your love life with your wife deteriorated? Panelist 1 asked again. Stan exhaled. Based on what I know, she has been having this affair for about 6 months. Around that time, her interest in being with me decreased. Since then, she's been cautious around me, sensing that I'm trying to control myself. I have a tendency to clench my fists when angry, and I even smashed a chair, but I didn't explain it properly when she saw the remains. Are you interested in reconciliation? Panelist 8 inquired. I'm not sure. Probably not, but I might consider it if we completely cut ties with everyone from our past. However, since I'm the one who was wronged, and I make more money than her, I don't want to pay alimony for her infidelity, especially since she was so public about it, Stan replied, as his face started turning red. Thank you, Presenter 3, Andy said. Please send in Presenter 4. Stan tried his best to control his emotions as he left the conference room. Talking about his problem to a room full of strangers agitated him more than he anticipated. He was surprised when Will hugged him as soon as he entered the viewing room, not only because of the act itself but also because of how calming it was. Jack and Tom both patted him on the shoulder too. Will was always well dressed. He loved fashionable clothes and could afford the most expensive outfits. However, watching his 3 new friends make their heartfelt presentations had caused him to sweat and his collar to tighten. Therefore, completely out of character, he removed his tie, unbuttoned his collar, and took off his suit jacket. Unlike Stan and Tom, Will was used to making presentations to groups of people, so his relaxed attire corresponded with his relaxed presentation. He was able to share his story with less passion than the first 3 presenters had exhibited. My circumstances are the way they are because of my family situation. I have several family members in public offices. I can't disclose which ones, and they constantly promote conservative Christian values. My wife is taking advantage of that situation. Will began while pacing back and forth in front of the panelists. She'll do everything possible to embarrass his entire family, and her lovers will testify that will ask them to be involved, and that she was hesitant. The panelists were mostly silent when Will finished. Finally, inquisitive panelist 1 asked, will her actions actually harm your family? I'm not willing to take the chance. The public can be unpredictable. They might feel pity for my family, which could help them, but it could also ruin everything Will hypothesized. It would definitely destroy my relationship with my family, as they never wanted me to marry her in the first place. They thought she was a gold digger and not trustworthy, and unfortunately, they were right. Andy looked around the room and seeing no one interested in asking more questions, he said, Thank you, Presenter 4. Please return to the viewing room, and I'll meet with you shortly. Will left, and Andy reiterated the instructions to the panelists on what they were required to do next. Let's meet back here in an hour and 5 minutes, at 1 p.m., and we will begin our discussions. Lunch is available on the other side of the movable divider in this room, or you can go out and grab something to eat, whatever you prefer. Just make sure to be back here at 1 o'clock. When Andy walked into the viewing room, he found 4 dejected guys. That was really tough on you all, wasn't it? It was just as hard watching my new friends as it was listening to my own story, Jack groaned. You're absolutely right, Stan chimed in, while Will and Tom nodded in agreement. Are you guys interested in watching the deliberations, or would you rather come back once a decision is reached? Or should I just call you with the results? What would you prefer? Andy asked. I'm emotionally drained, Tom said. I couldn't bear to watch the deliberations. Same here, Stan agreed. I don't want to watch, Jack stated. Tell you what Will said. If you guys trust me, Why don't I stay until the deliberations are over? I'll decide later if I feel masochistic enough to watch. I'll give each of you a call and tell you the results. Then, when we meet next, I'll provide you with the written comments from the panelists. How does that sound? I trust you completely, will Stan declared, getting up and giving him a big hug. Me too, Jack said, following Stan's lead. Ditto, Tom affirmed. After eating a yogurt for lunch, because he had no appetite, Will decided he would watch the deliberations. They were much quicker, but more painful, than he imagined. All of the panelists agreed that all 4 of the situations were really messed up and unfair. They thought that Jack had the best opportunity to salvage his situation, and that maybe Stan might find a way out too. However, they considered Tom and Will's circumstances to be hopeless, Tom's worse because of his kids. Some thought that Will's concerns were exaggerated and that he could easily get rid of the mean person. The panelists agreed that they were ready to vote after only about 50 minutes of discussion. They had a winner on the first ballot. Tom got 11 votes, Will 6, Stan 4, Jack none. They agreed that 3 of the panelists and Andy would write up the results, and the other 18 panelists went home all looking serious and upset. The write-up took another half hour, and then Andy delivered it to Will. Will called his 3 friends, relayed the news to them, and made arrangements to meet Saturday morning to plan how to help Tom get out of his terrible situation. Will was true to his word, too. He put all of his resources behind the plan, and the other 3 were determined to do anything that they could. Will had a divorce attorney at Branson Commercial Realty's conference room to explain all the details of family law in their state. The 4 friends asked the expert lots of questions for 2 straight hours with inquiries about custody, alimony, enforcing a prenup, violence, restraining orders, ownership, fair rights, filming, private investigators, everything relevant to their situations. When the divorce attorney left, Will ordered in lunch, and they started their discussions seriously. Tom told them, after thinking about everything that had happened, that he had no love or respect for Amy anymore. He considered divorce was inevitable, he just didn't want Amy to get sole custody of the kids. You've set your sights too low, Jack stated. I've got the start of an idea on how you can get sole custody yourself, pay no alimony, and get child support from her. I'm listening, Tom skeptically replied. After brainstorming for an hour, all 4 were smiling. We just may be able to pull this off, Stan grinned. Hooray! Tom screamed, pumping his fist into the air. Tom called Amy, said that he was coming home the next morning, although he would be sleeping in the guest bedroom, and left. Jack, Will, and Stan talked for a while longer, then each got to work on their assignments. We're not messing around, guys, this is war, Jack said as he shook both Will and Stan's hands when Jack and Stan left. Friday, 6 days after the 4 friends had made their plan, and after about 20 hours of work each by Stan and Jack, and 30 by Tom, as well as the expenditure of about $35,000 by Will, and as his own time contribution, everything was in place. Amy was busy having a surprise visit with Jeremy in her room when her 6- and 8-year-old daughters burst into the room. Mommy, when are we going to? Eek. The 8-year-old shrieked. As he scrambled to get out of the house, Tom and Amy's part-time nanny, the woman who had brought the kids home from school, was waiting. With the frantic 8-year-old hiding behind her skirt, she smacked him on the side of the head with a frying pan, knocking him into a mirror and cutting his head so that blood spurted all over the place. The nanny hit him twice more on his back before he stumbled out of the house, bruised and bleeding. The retired next-door neighbor diligently wrote down his license plate number as Jeremy drove away from the cul-de-sac. The nanny had already called the police before she hit Jeremy the first time, and the phone was still dangling off the receiver, so that the 911 operator was recording all of the nearby sounds in the house. The police arrived within minutes, and it took 4 of them to calm everyone down and try to make sense of the chaos. Tom was sitting calmly in his office when the police called. Tom expressed the appropriate level of concern as he talked with her on the phone. After he hung up, he cheerfully told his secretary, Elaine, I'll be gone the rest of the day on a family emergency. Tell anyone who calls that I'll reach them Monday, as he left his office. Things didn't go well for Amy or Jeremy. At first, Amy lied to the police. When Tom got home and showed the video of the entire incident to the police sergeant and emailed it to her office at her request, Amy had some explaining to do. Jeremy had already been identified by his license plate and was being questioned by police at the local hospital emergency room. A CSI team collected blood samples from the floor and wall near the broken mirror and took the sheets from the bed in the master bedroom. Amy was taken in for questioning and read her rights. Since lying to the police was against state law, including obstruction of justice, and she was also charged with child endangerment, she was held in jail over the weekend, since there was no magistrate available to grant bail. After Amy's parents bailed her out on Monday, she was met by a process server at her front door and served with divorce papers and a temporary restraining order requiring that she stay away from her children, husband, and house until a hearing could be held. A deputy accompanied her into the house to get some clothing, personal items, and her car keys. By the time that Wednesday rolled around, Amy's attitude had completely changed. She called Tom, who was happy to talk to her. "I don't know how you did it, but you got me, Tom. You win." "What do you want?" "Why, Amy, honey, didn't you read the divorce papers? I want sole custody of the kids, child support, and you out of my life for good. I understand from Jeremy's wife that he'll soon be a free man, so the two of you should get together and have a nice, miserable life." Tom replied, trying to sound as sarcastic as possible just before he hung up. Thursday, Will, Jack, and Stan met at Bronson Commercial Realty and conferenced Tom in by phone. Tom's daughters were having a hard time, and he was reluctant to leave them, even with his parents, although his mom was staying with him to help out in getting them to school, etc. "Guys, I don't know how to thank you. I mean, you all treated it just like it was your problem and performed really well," Tom praised. "Hey, that was the deal, dude," Jack replied with a big smile. "It was an honor to help. And don't forget that we have one more trick up our sleeve. Amy will be shocked when the police inform her that the blood they drew from her at the police station tested positive for HIV. All four laughed. "When are you going to tell her that the HIV test is a fake?" Jack asked Tom. "I'll never tell her it's a fake, but we'll be sure to somehow see that she's tested again after I get sole custody of the kids. I don't want to ruin her life like she has tried to ruin mine," Tom chuckled. "Agreed," Stan laughed. Those cameras and emails to the kids' school and the part-time nanny and that pieced-together phone message, all supposedly from Amy's phone, were priceless. "Stan, in here I thought that you were just a big dumb jock," Tom continued to praise. "Glad to ruin your stereotype," fella Stan chortled. "And to pay all that money? Well, wow," Tom said, his voice now starting to crack with emotion. "I'm a little upset, though," Will replied, "on how easy it was for my associate to persuade someone at the police station to substitute the blood sample Jack got for us for Amy's. Well, even though that's not good, we must have done something right to get the bonus of the part-time nanny knocking the crap out of that jerk," Jeremy Will chuckled. "Did you know that Grandma was so fierce?" "Hell no," Tom replied. "But she's getting a raise and I'm going to make sure that I stay on her good side from now on." After the excited quartet exchanged some more compliments, Tom got serious. "Listen, guys, I know that the deal was we would just handle the so-called winner's problem, but that's not fair. I think that we can handle all of them, one at a time, and we have to act now. We can't wait until my divorce is final. The tough attorney that Will got for me assures me that, given the circumstances, I'll get sole custody." "Do you have a plan, Tom?" Will asked. "Hell yeah, I do. It will take some physical pain on your part, Will, but it will end up with your wife in jail, one of her friends hurt, and the other one willing to testify on your behalf. It does require Stan to do extra work too. Are you up for it, big guy?" "I've had to take prescription drugs to calm myself down to keep from hurting my wife and her friend," Stan responded with determination. "I'd love to stop taking the drugs for a while and be able to express my frustrations. That is assuming that you have a plan for me next, Tom." "That I do, Stan, my friend, that I do," Tom chuckled. "My mind has been working overtime for the last week, and I have plans for Jack too." "Okay," then Stan exclaimed. "Let's have it." At Bronson Commercial Realty Saturday morning, 8 a.m., Tom said. "Got it," the other three replied in unison. Will's wife, Julie, at the age of 28, 24 years younger than him, didn't realize that her Tuesday meeting with Frank, her number 2 friend, in her alleged room, was being recorded with audio. Stan had made sure that the cameras from Tom's house, which were no longer needed, were providing solid evidence. Julie had apparently come to the conclusion that Will was weak and that she had complete control over him. The audio also recorded her disrespectful comments about Will and her bragging about how she was blackmailing him. When Stan viewed the recording to evaluate its quality, he was disturbed by the video for various reasons. Obviously, Julie's blatant cheating was the most troubling aspect. Stan and Jack, disguised, paid Frank a visit on Wednesday. After Stan engaged in a physical altercation with him, they had a talk. "You will testify against Julie, and you won't see her again," Stan demanded. "Here's $10,000 in cash for your help, and you'll receive another $10,000 when the situation is resolved," regardless of whether or not you need to testify, Jack said, handing over some of Will's money. But if you support Julie or engage with her again, you're in danger, Stan warned, punching him in the stomach. I understand, Frank groaned while on his knees. Jack, hiding in the large closet on the other side of the bed from the bedroom entrance in Will's mansion, quietly confirmed, yes. Now remember, Stan cautioned, when you hear the signal, close your eyes and cover them with your arm. Will nervously nodded. Sensing his anxiety, Stan grabbed him by the shoulders and continued, you can do this, Will, it's going to work, and Jack and I have your back. Will smiled crookedly. I know you do, Stan, I know you do. Will burst into his bedroom and saw Julie and Justin there. Get out of my house, jerk, Will yelled. Are you talking to me, little man? Justin barked. I'll never watch you betray our marriage vows, Will whined. I married you only for your money, little man, and you should know that by now. And if you don't do as I say, like I've instructed you before, I'm going to tell everyone, including your conservative Christian relatives, that you've done things with other men while I watched. Justin will support me, won't you, honey? Julie snickered, hugging Justin. You bet, babe, Justin responded, returning her hug. I want you out of my house. I own this house, not her, and you're trespassing, Will squealed. Teach him a lesson, honey, Julie said to Justin. Don't hurt him, but make sure he knows not to mess with us. I warn you that I will defend myself, Will barked, less than convincingly. Oh, really? Justin mocked as he started slapping Will. Will tried to fight back, but then Justin punched him in the nose. Fortunately, Will, though down, was conscious when he heard the signal and immediately closed his eyes and covered them with his arm. Justin thought he was trying to avoid getting hit in the face again and started laughing while threatening Will with great bodily harm, but suddenly intense lights turned on and blinded both Justin and Julie. When Stan pressed the button on his remote, the bedroom cameras turned off at the same time the blinding lights turned on. Wearing protective eyewear, Stan quickly entered the room, put his arm around the disoriented Justin's neck, and forcefully bent Justin's body over his knee. The loud crack and Justin's piercing scream indicated that Justin's back was broken, just as planned. Stan looked over at the bed and saw that Jack had completed his task of hitting Julie on the head hard enough to disorient her but not enough to knock her out. Once Stan saw that Jack had blindfolded Julie, Stan pressed the remote again and the blinding lights turned off. Stan helped the dazed Will up. You did great, man. Sorry I didn't press the remote right after the slaps but before he punched you, but now it will be even more convincing. Removing his eye protection, Jack joined Will and asked with concern, Are you sure you can handle the next part? It looks like Justin hit you pretty hard, and I think your nose is broken. I want to follow the plan exactly. I don't care about the pain, Will groaned. Did you bring the gun that Julie bought with her personal credit card last week? Got it right here, Jack grinned, using his gloved hand to pull out a small pistol. Let's do this, then Will said, closing his eyes and lifting his hands above his head. Jack went over to Groggy, blindfolded Julie, and put the water gun in her right hand while he held it too. Jack suddenly thought of something and said, She is right-handed, isn't she? No, left-handed, Will replied, temporarily opening his eyes. When Stan had Will in position and Jack had the water gun that he and Julie were holding in her left hand properly lined up, Jack pulled the trigger. The single shot grazed the foam pad. Will wasn't much for working out on Will's left side and hit the wall behind him. Ow, that hurts like crazy, Will said. Jack took a look at Will's side while Stan held him up. Looks like it was perfect. It will bleed and there will be red water on the bullet when they recover it from the wall, but there is no significant or permanent damage. It may even give you character when you strut around the pool in your swim trunks, Jack chuckled. Funny man, Will said. Jack checked on Justin, and he had apparently passed out from pain. Julie was lying on the bed exhausted, the water gun having dropped onto the floor, and though not fully awake, not really aware either. As Will was holding a washcloth to his side, and Jack started to remove the blindfold. Have you been dating anyone lately? Will asked Stan. No, while I was on my medicine I didn't have the desire to, especially with my ex of a wife, Stan replied. Just then he realized that he had been ogling Julie's face and noticed the condition of him. Oh, sorry, man, Stan said to Will. Shoot, I'm sorry, as he turned to leave. Will grabbed Stan by his arm. Listen, I don't have any interest in her anymore. I'm ending things with her, and she's not likely to get any attention when serving her detention, so why don't you hug her? Just don't leave any evidence behind. You wouldn't mind? Flabbergasted Stan asked. You'd be doing me a favor, Will smiled. Jack and I can take care of things outside. Just come downstairs when you're done and I'll call for help. Stan and Jack hustled out the back door of the house to the van parked remotely and took off while Will called the authorities. As had been previously planned, the four amigos met at Bronson Commercial Realty again 2 days later. Will had a bandage over his broken nose and was favoring his left side, but was giddy with joy. "I guess that it worked out, huh?" Tom grinned. "Your plan was genius," Will laughed. "So tell us what happened after Stan and I left," Jack eagerly demanded. "The CSI team confirmed that the evidence matched my story that after I weakened Justin, I have real street cred now," Will laughed. "That after I weakened him, Julie pulled the water gun she had purchased a few days before and sprayed me the water residue on her dominant hand confirmed it. They believed that she got injured when, despite being sprayed, I charged her and her head hit the headboard of the bed. Her red water traces were just where Jack put them." "Did you show them the video?" Stan anxiously inquired. "Sure as heck did," Will smugly replied. "It supported my story completely, and I was able to convince them that Justin punching me into the wall knocked out the cameras. Justin is now in the hospital's criminal ward in a body cast, handcuffed to his bed. He's been charged with assault and criminal trespass and conspiracy to commit blackmail. Julie is in jail charged with attempted murder and conspiracy to commit blackmail and has a $500,000 bond, which for some reason no one has been anxious to post for her." After a good 15 minutes of further expressions of unmitigated joy, Tom got serious. "All right, guys, back to reality. Stan, I have a completely plan for you. Are you game, or do you want to take it easy?" "I want the biggest chaos in the history of mankind," Stan bellowed, slamming his fist on the conference room tabletop, shaking almost the entire room. "Don't break my table, dude," Will laughed. "Sorry," Stan joked, "but I am done with my ex-wife Debbie and everyone who knows about her affair. In the last few weeks I've received many sly smiles and snickers behind my back, and I can't take it anymore. I will explode unless I get some really sweet revenge." Tom got a big, evil, mischievous grin. "I think that what I have in mind might be too much for you," he sneered. "Try me," Stan retorted. After Tom explained his plan, Will and Jack curled up their noses. "Oh, gross," they said in unison. "Even I can't successfully do what you want with the emails and texts without getting caught, but I know a guy who lives on the fringes of the law who could it will cost," Will, those Stan said. "Money is not an issue. My expenditures implementing our little plans are the best money that I've ever spent in my life. Also, one of the facilities that I am a silent partner in and needs to be remodeled anyway is a perfect place to host Tom's proposed event." Will gleefully replied, but then winced since too much activity hurt his side with the foam pad. "Dudes, I don't mind helping out with medical procedures using protective gear, but there is no way that I want to assist in uncomfortable procedures that invade someone's personal boundaries," Jack said, grimacing. "Out-of-town professionals will take care of that," Will chimed in. "Only money is necessary because I'm not comfortable with those procedures either." "Can you get enough laughing gas though, Jack?" "No problem," Jack grinned, "but it will have to be mixed with a little gas to do what we want." "That also is no problem." A week later, Stan's wife Debbie, her brother, mother, father, and sister-in-law, as well as her friend Trent, Trent's sister and brother-in-law, and Trent's mother and father, were enjoying drinks in an ornate, cozy little private lounge, ostensibly to celebrate Trent's upcoming birthday. They didn't notice that the room that they were in had been sealed, or that suddenly Jack, in disguise and serving as the bartender, had left the room. When the laughing gas with gas had been flowing into the room for about 5 minutes, the guests started falling asleep, those who weighed the least first, and those who weighed more a little later. Once, by viewing the TV connected up to the closed-circuit camera, Stan was able to determine that all the partygoers were sedated. His little group, all wearing gas masks, entered the room. An out-of-town professional worked with each of Stan, Tom, and Jack. They allowed Will to take a pass since his nose was still bothering him and since his lounge was going to be destroyed. Stan, Jack, and Tom brought in mattresses which covered much of the floor while the professionals neatly piled up the guests' clothes in a corner, and then all 6 of them proceeded to cause damage to the lounge and make a mess. They put debris on the hands and bodies of all of the guests, including bruising some of the guys' knuckles. Most of the effects of the sedative had worn off by the time that the cops were directed to the lounge and the guests were trying to find their clothes and cover up. When the first CSI there found one of the crumpled up party emails and showed it to the manager, he went crazy and demanded that the troublemakers be prosecuted, not only for vandalism but for their wild behavior. Somehow the TV stations and newspapers in the Washington area got a hold of the story, and the photographs appeared all over the internet. The cops didn't believe that none of the partygoers had ever seen the emails and messages on their computers and phones about the party. all sent to and from Debbie's phone or computer. To say that Debbie, Trent, and their relatives were embarrassed would be an understatement. The fact that all of them who had jobs lost them also didn't help their moods or financial situations, especially since they were all sued by the lounge for the damage that they did, which amounted to $25,000. All except Debbie, the foolish person, plead guilty to vandalism and wild behavior misdemeanors. They were fined $2,500 each, required to contribute to paying off the damage to the lounge, and were placed on probation for 2 years and had to register as offenders. Foolish Debbie put the state to the expense of a trial, despite the fact that, as the ringleader, she could have gotten the same plea deal as the others, only with the addition of 90 days in jail and 3 years probation instead of 2. The jury didn't believe her, and since she was the one who apparently initiated the emails and messages, rented the lounge, and rented the mattresses, the prosecutor asked the jury to give her a severe punishment. She was fined $20,000 and sentenced to 2 years in jail and 4 years probation after that, and had to register as an offender. Stan never even bothered to see Debbie again, despite a dozen attempts by Debbie to contact him while she was in jail or out on bail before her sentence. Stan's divorce came in immediately after the trial, while she was incarcerated, and she received essentially none from the marital assets except what she was able to sell to help pay her legal fees. Poor Trent. He had even more bad luck. When he was leaving the unemployment office one rainy day, a large masked person attacked him and beat him up. He told the cops that it might be Stan, however Will and 5 of his employees swore that Stan was working as a consultant at Bronson Commercial Realty at the time of the incident. Shortly after Debbie and the other partygoers were arrested, the 4 friends met at Bronson Commercial Realty again. Stan was so grateful for the efforts of the people who he now considered his best friends ever that he started crying. "Hey, cheer up, dude," Will teased. "If you start crying, we won't be able to help you up." "That was the most disgusting thing ever," Jack groaned, but it was even more successful than we expected. The group didn't go into detail about their successful endeavors to assist Stan like they did with the other 2 incidents. This was mainly because the details were repulsive. Tom spoke up and brought up the next step. "Okay, now we need to help Jack," he insisted. "Here's my plan." Jack interrupted him. "Hold on, Tom. Let me update you on the current situation." "All right, go ahead," Tom replied. "It's been over a month since we first met, and it was getting harder for me to hide my feelings. Audrey started to get really nervous around me, especially when I would call her to check where she was whenever I suspected she might be up to something. When I turned down any activities with her for the 5th time, she asked with tears in her eyes, 'What's wrong, Jack?' Sarcastically, I replied, 'I don't know, Audrey. You're supposed to be smart. Figure it out,' and then I went into the guest room. The next day, she told me she was going to see a therapist to work on her issues and begged me not to leave her. When I responded, 'You really do need help, you crazy person,' she burst into tears. The other 3 listened intently. Later that day, I received a call saying she had been admitted to a mental hospital. She's still there and needs therapy. If she's diagnosed with a mental illness, I have to stick by her. I made a commitment when we got married, and our daughter needs her." "Our daughter has been struggling since Audrey got admitted last week," Jack said solemnly. After a long silence, Tom stood up, walked over to Jack, and gave him a hug. "So what do you want us to do, Jack?" Tom asked. "For now, I just need your support until I meet with the doctors next week," Jack replied, tears welling up in his eyes. "What's your insurance like?" Will inquired. "I'm not sure how much it will cover, but we are missing her income since she's on unpaid leave right now," Jack muttered. Will called his assistant and asked her to have the director of Bronson Commercial Realty write Jack a $50,000 check. "I can't accept that," Jack protested. "You need to," Stan said, placing a hand on Jack's. "If any of us could have saved our marriages, we would have. You're the only one with a chance. I'm not rich, but I would be happy to contribute $5,000 myself." "Me too," Tom added. "You have to take it," Will insisted. "Please." In the end, things worked out for the 4 friends, although not exactly as they had predicted. Jack stayed married to Audrey. Her brain chemistry had been affected by changes to her body after pregnancy and a medication that she had incorrectly been prescribed by a doctor who lost his license due to incompetence and multiple malpractice judgments. While her condition was difficult to diagnose, the treatment was fairly straightforward once identified. Within 3 months, she returned to her pre-pregnancy self. They now have a 5-year-old boy and are extremely happy. Tom gained sole custody of his daughters. Amy struggled with her situation and never moved in with her former partner, Jeremy. She was also preoccupied with her HIV diagnosis, which she later found out was a mistake 6 months later. As a result, she lost her job and moved 1,500 miles away. She has only seen her daughters 3 times in the past 3 years, but calls about once a month. Tom tries to be polite during these conversations, but if she starts complaining, he ends the call. After his divorce was finalized, Tom returned to the Gold Coast bar to thank Amber, who still worked there. They hit it off, and now they live together. Amber runs her own internet business, set up by Stan before he left town, and no longer works as a waitress. They have no interest in getting married, but they are happy together, especially since Amber has become a caring mother figure for Tom's daughters. Both girls are well-adjusted, even as teenagers. After his divorce, Will married another young woman who isn't as attractive as Julie. However, she is devoted to Will, and he's happy with that. The gunshot wound he sustained was the push he needed to start exercising regularly and improve his diet. He lost 30 pounds and will likely live longer and feel better. His family was not negatively affected since they handled all the fallout from the situation with Julie privately. Stan couldn't stop thinking about how amazing Julie was or how attractive she was. He began visiting her in jail, and surprisingly, their personalities clicked. When Stan suggested to Will that they drop the charges against her and convinced the district attorney not to prosecute, Will thought he was crazy. "I can handle her," Stan declared. "I have a stronger connection with her than any other woman I've ever met working as an intermediary between Will, Julie, and the district attorney." Without disclosing his relationship with Will, Stan managed to negotiate a deal. Julie pleaded guilty to several misdemeanors, received credit for time served, and was placed on probation for 10 years with some interesting conditions. These included accepting only half of what she was entitled to under her prenuptial agreement, and agreeing that if she made any derogatory comments or cheated on her new husband, her probation would be immediately revoked and she would serve the 10-year sentence. With the savings from the deal regarding Julie's prenuptial agreement, Stan's financial contribution to the quartet's activities ended up being only a few $1,000s. Stan and Julie got married 2 months after their divorces were finalized, and with permission from her probation officer to use video conferencing, moved 2,000 miles away to start a new life together. All 4 guys cherished the unexpected bond that brought them together at the Gold Coast bar. It changed their lives for the better.